Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Brooke and today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be doing like a sit down talk video. Like compared to my other videos, it's going to be different than this one. I just had a thought in mind and I just decided, you know, why not just sit down and talk and show you guys my testimony. I wanted to film this video when I first started doing my YouTube channel, but I did film it, but it kind of didn't work out because I decided I wanted to wait to kind of just give myself some time to like grow my faith and really I just wanted to take it slow. Anyways, without further ado, I'm gonna start with my background. So if you guys don't know me, my name is Brooke and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I am 21, pretty much I'm 21 and a half. I will be 22 in January of next year, which is really hard to believe because we're already halfway into this year and another 6 months I will be 22, which is really crazy to believe. Anyway, so growing up, I grew up in a Christian home my entire life. My parents are Christians and so I pretty much grew up with my whole entire family as all believers. As a kid growing up, I was basically kind of like forced myself to go to church, even though like my parents would drag me into going to church, which I didn't really have any interest in going. I just remember going to church on Sunday. I would sit there, like I would pretend I was listening, but in reality I just didn't really want to like hear the gospel and I just didn't really have any interest in like reading my Bible. The only thing I really cared about was like seeing my friends at church, but literally the whole part of church, like the main important part was just like hearing the gospel and like, you know, worshiping God in church. I just didn't really care about that at all. Anyways, as a kid growing up, I was like super sassy. I would always get into like an attitude and I would always just throw a fit to my parents, and literally like whenever like my parents would tell me to do something, I would just be like, oh, like I don't want to do it, or I would just I don't know, I would always just get like in a really grumpy mood. I just had so much anger in my heart, and most of the times I just didn't really like show interest in others, or I only mostly just cared about myself, of like, you know, the way that I looked and the way that I dressed and the way that I just wanted to kind of just like show off around people. Anyways, now moving forward to middle school, this is really where I really struggled with depression, and I was really trying to like just find like these like people that I want to be friends with, but I was trying to like act cool around them, and of course they just shut me down. They'd be like, we're sorry, we don't want to be friends with you, like you're not going to be like in our group. And so they kind of just kicked me out. When this got to me, I remember when like people just like, you know, just said like, you know, you're not cool, you're trying to act cool around us, like, you know, we have our own group over here, you stay with these people. I was just like, you know, why do I feel like nobody doesn't like me? And of course, by then I ended up getting bullied. My middle school years were tough. Through 6th through 8th grade was obviously the toughest years I've ever had in my entire life. Of course, middle school might have been not easy for everybody, but for me, it was really hard. In middle school, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I only had like a couple people that I liked to just like be around with, and of course, I felt comfortable being around them. But when I tried to make more friends, it obviously just didn't work because nobody just didn't like the way that I looked, and I was obviously trying to act cool around them. And every single time this would happen to me, I would just get so angry at myself and just be like, I'm trying to make more friends and I'm trying to like, you know, do this and do that, and I was always super nice to people, but through their feedback back to me, they would just act just super mean to me, and I would just obviously get bullied and made fun of, and I'm just like, I don't even know why this is even happening to me. Most days coming back from school, like I just remember walking back to my car, either like mostly my mom or my dad would pick me up, but one day when my mom picked me up from school, when I got into my car, my mom would always ask me like, oh, how was your day at school? And I would always say the same thing, like, oh, it was okay, it was alright. I remember every time she'd say this, she would be like, is there something going on? Like, did somebody say something mean to you? Of course, through with this, like I would always have so many sit down talks with my mom and my dad about some sort of just drama at school. I remember sitting there talking about this, I would get literally so frustrated and angry with myself and to my parents, and I'm just like, I don't want to sit down and talk about this. Can we just get over this and let me just go upstairs in my own room, be by myself, and just have my own space? I remember in middle school, I just always wanted to get this attention from people, like obviously trying to act cool, and of course like I had a lot of attention from boys. Of course, when this attention got to me, like of course if a boy just came up to me and be like, oh, I like you, like I want your number, like, you know, like would you want to like go out with me? And I would say yes to a lot of things. So of course, like obviously like, yo, yeah, I want to be like your girlfriend. And so when this happened, I just like, I had this sense of like joy and satisfaction that it gave me. But of course, throughout time when I was like going through breakups and all of this stuff, I just kept crying in my room. Nothing just seemed like it was satisfying me, and I was just like super confused with all my thoughts, and I was just like, why is this happening to me? I began to question myself so much, and I was just like, well, I'm just gonna now just drown in my sorrow and drown in my depression. But I had so many thoughts and I was just super confused with myself. Anyways, moving on to high school, my freshman year, of course, I was doing the same thing where I was really trying to like stick around with people and try to act cool and like make new friends. I was still getting bullied and made fun of, and I had this one girl, she just some reason just didn't like me. And I was obviously trying to like be nice to her, like I was always being nice to everybody, and of course she would like make really mean comments at me. For some reason people just didn't like the way of like how nice I was trying to be to people, because of course I'm just like, I have a really friendly personality, and so I like being around people and talking to people. It's just like every single time when somebody would just bash at me with like these like mean comments, like all of these people just throwing these words at me, and I'm just like, I would obviously of course get really frustrated, really stressed. I would get super angry, and of course I just remember it just would just stir up like a pot. And literally, even when somebody says like something mean to me, if it's just like one sentence, like literally it would just bother me. It would just get in my head, and my head would just stir up, and I would just like get super frustrated. And of course the people that I was around with in high school, like from my freshman to my junior year of high school, so I was still back in California, like of course I was not around the best people. Back in middle school, I did start cussing, but of course all throughout my high school years, I just continued to cuss, and of course it's just like, to me, it just felt good. But of course, like whenever I would hear people cussing, I started doing it. And of course I began to do it even more, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this actually feels good. And when I was doing it, it just didn't really bother me. Like of course I would throw like an F-bomb out there, like the S word, and I was just like, dude, this feels good. And I was getting more attention from people, and I was just like, I really like doing it. So from my freshman through my senior year, of course I was a full-time student and a full-time athlete. I was super busy, but once I got into sports, I began to like, you know, try to make more friends, of course, and I was trying to like act cooler than everybody, like haha, yeah, like can I be your friend or whatever. I would obviously like, you know, I would just try to act like I was the cool kid. And for some reason, like some people, like, you know, they like kind of like the attention that I was getting to them, and of course they'd be like, oh yeah, I want to be your friend, but like of course I was still getting made fun of. And I remember when people were making fun of me, of course it just bothered me super quick, and I would get super offended by like some certain thing that somebody would say. Why are you saying this back to me? I even almost would like actually even like start arguments or like kind of just like say something back to them. But of course when somebody just does that to me, like my anger will just bash out, and I'm just like, you know, I would just throw a bunch of just F-bombs and out there like, oh, if you're gonna say this back to me, like try me, or try to say something back. During my years throughout high school, I was always super focused on just my looks and like the way that I would act towards people, and of course just like acting cool around people. And I kept chasing these worldly things like addictions or just partying and all of this stuff. In moments it would satisfy me, and I would just get super depressed and just like really confused in my thoughts, and I'm just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this. Like I'm trying to stop. And then of course I go back into it, and it just progresses to get worse and worse. Now moving back on with going to church, like when I was in high school, I only wanted to go to church to like, you know, the fun events like summer camps. Of course summer camps are fun, but you know, I was at summer camps, like of course I only really cared about the games, like seeing my friends, but I just didn't really have any interest of like even just hearing the gospel. Like I would have my Bible like on my lap, but I would like pretend I was like that Christian, or like I was saved, and like other people believed it, but of course like outside of me from church, I was a completely different person. One of the years at my summer camps at my church, I even told my friends, I was like, oh my gosh, like God saved me and all of that, like I'm free from my sin. And of course like all my friends believed me, they were happy for me. In reality, I thought that God saved me, but when we went back to like the world, like this was after summer camp, I went back to the things I was doing. I wasn't really thinking about God, and I just said, you know what, I don't care about God. I'm gonna go back into doing these worldly things that I, you know, truly desired of doing. Of course, when I went back into these things, like nothing just didn't really bother me. Like when I obviously began to like continue to cuss, doing all of these things, like I was following the wrong crowd. Like whatever my friends were doing, I would follow them, and I began to do really bad things, especially when I was in high school. Even in these moments, I wasn't really thinking about God. Like of course I was like pretending that I was saved or whatnot, but like when I was in church, I would act like I was a Christian, like, you know, like being interested in going to Bible study or a youth group. But outside of church, I was such a complete opposite person. In high school, I began to make more friends, but in middle school, I didn't really have much friends because like I was getting majorly bullied. And of course, going into high school, I of course was trying to like just be like the center of attention from everybody. When I was a full-time athlete in high school, like of course I did volleyball and track, and so when people were like looking at me like as like, you know, I was like one of like the top, like, I don't know, track athlete on my team, or like one of like the best setters on my team, people started giving me the attention. I was just like, you know, oh my gosh, this actually feels good. Like when people come up to me, like for volleyball, for example, freshman and my sophomore year, I was a setter on my team, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a really good setter and I was really good at it. I just always just wanted just to show off around people, be like, okay, yeah, like look at me, like this is what I got. And I had people come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, you were like such a good setter, like you did amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like yeah, thank you. I remember I would get a lot of compliments from people, like, you know, saying how good I am at sports, how athletic I was. Like it just felt super good, and I was just like, yes, this is the attention that I want. During the year of 2019, when this year came up, in August of 2019, my grandpa, which is my dad's dad, he passed away. I mean, like growing up, I've always struggled with anxiety, but when I was like losing friends and losing loved ones, like my grandpa, and like when he passed away, like the anxiety inside of myself, I just could not even control it. And I was just like, I would get super anxious about these things of like what my life is gonna be like in the future. Like I don't even know like what path I'm gonna be in life, like, you know, like the next few years. I just didn't really know like the plans that God was gonna have for my life, and I would just get super anxious about having all of these bunch of like mixed thoughts in my mind. It just got super bad over the years. Going into my senior year of high school, so me and my family, we moved here in North Carolina in the year of 2021, and so we moved here after I finished my junior year. And before I even started my senior year, and when I went into my senior year, I just had so much anxiety. Like of course I didn't really know anybody coming here. Like it was just like a very nerve-wracking feeling. And as time went on, when I went to this school my senior year, like of course I made a bunch of new friends. Of course I was not around the right people. Like I was doing the same thing, trying to get attention. Of course I began to cuss even more. Like I remember I would put cuss words in almost every single sentence, I would say. My language was that bad that I just could not even control it. I began doing like these inappropriate things. Like I would of course just like, you know, just follow the crowd of just what they were doing. It just made me feel good, and I was just like, you know, all these worldly things were satisfying me. And of course later on I began to question myself, you know, why am I doing that? And like whenever I would go into church, I would just sit there and of course pretending like I was a Christian, but when I was in the world, when I kept doing these worldly things, of course I just wanted just to cry to myself so bad and just be like, you know, I feel like God saved me, but then I'm like, you know, am I truly really Christian? Or, you know, why am I still doing those worldly things? I was just super confused. I was just always really confused of like the word, you know, like what does saved really mean? What does that mean when a person like myself, that I was a sinful person, is running away from God, and you know, you come and repent to God, confessing your sin, and God saves you. And that one time when I was pretending that I was saved, and of course like my friends were just like, oh my gosh, so happy for you, and you know, went back to the worldly things. And of course this came back into my mind when I was in church, and I was just super confused. Like I was just like a lost puppy. Like I just don't even know where I'm going. And I was like this in my senior year of high school. Like of course it was my last year of high school, and I was like, I want to make the best out of it. Overall, I would say my senior year of high school, like of course I tried to make it the best I could, but of course, you know, everything doesn't really turn out as perfect. Like of course I made friends, you know, in class, or when I was on the volleyball and the track team, and it became to get really bad. Like my senior year of high school, oh my gosh guys, I was definitely not around the best people. Like walking in the hallways, like when I would go to my next class, I would hear a bunch of inappropriate things, and of course it would just sink into my mind, and I was really getting these bad thoughts in my head, and I was like, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be hearing this, but it's just like, at the same time, why am I hearing this type of stuff? Since it was my senior year of high school, my last year of high school, I just wanted to just seek attention and like, you know, try to make as many friends as I could, you know, before I graduated. I did end up making a lot of friends in my senior year of high school, but of course, I mean, I had like somewhat, I would say, good friends, even though they weren't, but that's what I thought. But of course, I just kept continuing chasing the wrong thing. After I finished volleyball in the fall of my senior year, I decided, of course, like, you know, I'm gonna do track because I've done it since my freshman year of high school. And progressively over time, it got worse of, like, you know, I was making more friends. I began to get popular, like, on the track team, and of course, like, I got all the good attention that I got from people. But a friend I used to have, so this is where it just gets really bad. I even said that she was my best friend, but of course, I thought that's what we were, but of course, as her as a friend, she was just a very bad influence on me. Growing up, like from middle school to high school, I had many bad influences in my life, and of course it began to just drag me down into like depression and anxiety. Definitely my senior year, I struggled with a lot of depression, and I was mostly just focused on just like being the most popular on the team and just getting as much attention. During my track season, I had this one guy. He just randomly found my Instagram. He messaged me. Like literally the first thing he said was just, hey. And of course, I knew that I was like, well, I don't really know this guy as much. So I was just like, I probably shouldn't respond. Well, then of course I happened to respond. I said hey back because I was just like, oh, I shouldn't even be doing this. Like I knew it wasn't right, but I chose to respond, which of course I just didn't know why I did. And I told myself in my senior year that I didn't want to be in a relationship. Like I just wanted to focus on obviously keeping like my grades up, which I had really good grades in school. But I kept continuing seeking out for attention, like obviously getting a boyfriend because I was super tired of being lonely. Like I just wanted the attention of just like, you know, having a boyfriend in my life. But this guy that I dated in my senior year, we were only together for about 2 or 3 months, which was super short. Of course, when I was with this guy, I thought he was treating me right. You know, he bought me gifts and stuff. But in the beginning of a relationship, when we maybe got to about a month in a relationship, I noticed things were starting to get really, really bad. And I noticed some things, the way he was treating me. Like he would touch me inappropriately. Like of course he would try to like slip his hand underneath my shirt, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? At the same time, like it's just like it felt good to like, you know, obviously I don't know, being touched inappropriately. I just don't know why, but it's just like I got uncomfortable, but at the same time it's like it just felt good. And of course a month or 2 later he broke up with me, and so he moved on with a different girl, and I think that's just who he was. Like he go on from one girl to another girl like he did to me. He was pretty much just using me, and I just felt super broken. I came up into my room and I just started just crying. I was super depressed. I just wanted just to smash my head into my pillow. And as I was crying, I even remember this day, I was sitting on my bed till this day. I was crying. I was super depressed. I was so angry and frustrated, just like, why did I even get with this guy? I even told myself I didn't want a boyfriend my senior year, and of course I ended up doing that, and I crossed that line. I was just like, why the heck am I doing this to myself? Like I keep doing these certain patterns, like these repeated patterns that I kept doing over and over again, and of course I would get super confused with my thoughts, and I just got really angry. I tried not to show my depression or my anger as much while I was at church, but of course it's like I had to try my best to hide it. But there were definitely moments where I remember where I just didn't really want to talk, and they were just like, Brooke, why are you so quiet? Of course I was going through so many things. Like I just didn't know why God put me through this, but God put me through it for a reason. I'm not going to put much into detail with this situation, but last year 2023 was definitely not the best year I've had. I'm not going to throw out any names or anything like out there, but last year I wasn't living with my family for about 6 to 7 months. No communication, no texting, nothing. I just feel like through so many years I was put through so many bad situations, but this one just hit me like a train wreck. Several days and several months as I went through this really tragic time in my life when I was pulled away from my family, I began to get really depressed again. And of course, I think I was mostly depressed during this time instead of being angry. I would say both. And through several days, I would just sit in my thoughts and just be like, you know, I just didn't really know why it was happening to me. Like, I just feel like everything just came by to me as like in a blink of an eye. And of course, happening of like when I got taken away from my family, you know, that was literally the hardest part I've ever gone through in my life. I mean, of course, now I'm actually gonna cry. When I was not around my family for several months, I just didn't see them. Of course, like There were times where I just didn't want to be around my family because I just didn't really care. I forgot to mention this, but so when I got out of high school in 2022, I think it was around July, so it might have been the month after I graduated high school. That was when I professed to be saved. So I've been a Christian for around 2 years now. I would think it's been 2 years. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that, but going back into last year, like when I wasn't around my family, last year I was actually supposed to get married, but you know, that didn't happen. I would say going through of last year just was such a hard year of just going back into like being just so depressed with myself. And of course I had many nights of just crying, and I kept questioning God. I just didn't know why it was happening to me. Of course I didn't have any contact with my family, so there were times where I just didn't see them at all. Like I did not see them like any other day, like throughout these past several months. I did happen to meet up with them twice of last year, like, you know, just having several talks and just trying to just figure stuff out. Even as a professing Christian, like going through this time in my life, like I just didn't really know why God was putting me through this, and I began of just getting really tired of just been putting through so many life situations that just coming back and forth to me, and I'm just like, I just wanted to just give up. I mean, of course now I moved back in with my family. So I moved back in with my family August of last year, literally the first week of August, and of course it just felt really weird being back in my bedroom like 6-7 months later, and I'm just like, I was super confused. I was just like, God, why did you bring me back here? Like, I don't know why you had to pull me away from this thing. Like, I wanted to be with this family that I wanted to be and spend the rest of my life with. But of course, months later, I realized, you know, God just wanted to just close this door, and God just said, you know, it just wasn't meant to be. The first few months when I moved back into my home, which now, of course, I'm now living back with my parents still, even though I'm only 21 and a half. First few months of moving back in here was really rocky, and I had a hard time going to church. I wasn't, you know, sitting with the person that I was with for at least a little over a year. You know, during this time I had my friends like being there for me and supporting me, and like they, you know, had my back through everything. And of course they could definitely see what I was going through. Every Sunday that I would go, of course I was happy to see my friends, but during the messages, and you know, of course, you know, I love paying attention to the messages, but it's just like, it didn't hit me as well. Of course, I wanted to pay attention to the message because I knew why God wanted me still be at church. And of course, you know, if it wasn't for God, then I probably would have not gone back to church. Definitely mostly every Sunday that I sat through, even like during this really hard time that I went this past year. Of course, I had my friends with me. Like, it felt great, but I was mostly focused on just like my depression, just like I had so many questions circling my head, just like, God, I don't even know why you put me through this. And it was a really tough time going through it. And of course I tried my best to set myself some distractions that would even like keep me focused, of just not focusing on this one thing, but trying to have my mindset focused on God. It was really, really difficult. And I would try to like set some time putting into Bible study, and really just trying to like set my mind off of just not being so focused in my depression, because of course I still struggle with depression today, but during this time was just really, really hard. And I tried so many things, like of course like being around my friends more, hanging out, like catching up with a loved one. Several months later, I realized why God put me through the situation, even though I was supposed to get married this past year in December, but of course it didn't happen. And so I praise God that it didn't happen, because I realized that what I was being put through was not the best of it, and God decided just to close that door. And I could just feel God talking to me and just be like, you know, Brooke, what you were put through I chose to put you through this because I just thought it was best for me to just not be caught up in this tragic situation. And of course, it was definitely the most hardest thing I could have ever gone through. Of course, it was really hard for me just like not seeing them every single day because I was around them 24/7, and of course, I loved being around them, but being back here just made it harder because it's like, you know, when I would get off of work, I would go to their house, or just, you know, I would get a text be like, do you want to hang out? And of course, when I saw that I didn't really have that anymore, like, it was definitely really tough. Like, I had to let go of that, and I had to push off somebody that I truly loved the most. But God just chose, you know, Brooke, this is not the best for you, and you know, he just told me it just wasn't meant to be. I did realize that, you know, God put me through this for a specific reason, that several months later he just says, you know, I know the plans that I have for you. And so during this time, it was really hard putting my trust in God, but I knew God has better plans for me in my future. So the church that I go to now, so I was involved in the choir, I think January of last year, and I only went there for maybe about probably a couple months. During this time of my life when everything was happening to me, of course, I stopped going to choir because I just feel like I just didn't really have the motivation to even go, because I was going through so much and I went through so much pain. And I just said, you know, God, I just don't think it's the best time for me to even be in the choir. So I pushed it off for several months. Well, now, praise God, I'm actually back in the choir, but I've been back in the choir for months now. To be honest, I don't even remember like what month I went back to the choir, but I've done choir since I was 5 growing up. But I am now finally back in the choir, and I feel like this was a calling from God. He was telling me, I want you to be back in the choir. And of course, I was happy my prayer was answered. I've definitely always wanted to go back with the choir. And of course, I just, you know, in church, I love singing, and I love doing what I love to do. I'm super thankful that God did save me, and I couldn't be more blessed of just how many friends he's truly blessed me in my life at my church. If God truly didn't save me, I don't even think I would have never come this far, because several months of I've just seen God has just grown me in so many miraculous ways, and he's truly blessed me with so many amazing people in my life. Definitely, I've gotten back into the choir, of course, and I now am serving in my church, like through ministry. Like, I serve in the nursery once a month. Even though what I went through last year, which was such a hard time that I went through in my life, and you know, of course, I didn't really know why God put me through it, but he put me through it for a reason. And all I can say is I'm truly blessed that, you know, he took me out of it. It was tough, but I just seriously couldn't be more thankful that God pulled me away from the situation. And that I think when I realized that this really hard breakup that I went through actually really taught me a lot of things, and I learned a lot from it. It's super funny because 2 of my friends that I'm actually really close with now, they went through breakups almost kind of the same time I went through my breakup, and God just decided, you know, I'm gonna put these girls in your life, I'm gonna put, you know, these friends in your life. I realized as this happened, I was like, God seriously did put these friends in my life for a reason. I did realize why he put these people in my life, like at my church and my college ministry, and of course I still consistently going. And of course, you know, if I decided not to go back to my college ministry or my church, I probably wouldn't know where I would be. And for myself, I am truly just so blessed and thankful of just how much God has seriously worked in my life through several years. And of course, I wouldn't even think I would make it this far. It took me several months to really mature in my faith. And of course, even today, there's so many ways that I'm still growing. And of course, I'm learning through so many things in church. And, you know, I don't know everything in the Bible, but, you know, I'm learning a bunch of things. And of course, you know, even like my mom or my parents, they've been saved way longer than I have. I've even had my mom said, you know, I've been a Christian for 20 years, and of course I'm still learning something new in the Bible. I would say even though I'm still a new Christian, like I've been saved for 2 years now, which is really hard to believe because I got baptized I think a few months later after I got saved. And fast forwarding back to when I got saved and making it to this day where I am right now, I would just say I am actually really proud of the person that I've actually become and how much God has seriously grown me into a young godly woman. Even though there's been some things where I am still going through some pretty tough things at my church, I'm still going consistently every Sunday. Of course, there's been times where I didn't want to go, but I knew God was calling me to still go to church. Of course, I'm not stopping to go to church. I love going to church, and you know, I feel like now I have just been loving consistently going to church, serving in ministry, being around my friends that I truly care and love about the most. This tragic situation that I went through, I don't even think I would have made it this far. I don't even think I would have the friends that I have in my life. Like, I have so many amazing guy and girlfriends. Like, of course, I'm just so thankful for every single one of them. And I'm thankful for the fact that, you know, God has saved me and he has given me just so much abundant joy and just thankfulness and just happiness that, you know, I have no true desire for any worldly thing, and now he's given me a heart of just worshiping him and just going to church every Sunday, going to youth group every single week. I'm just seriously so thankful of just how much God has seriously worked in my heart for several months and how provided me with so many things that I feel like I don't even deserve. I just could not be more thankful of just, you know, to him for saving my life, because I seriously would have never made it this far. And I do realize when I go through pain and sorrows and just confusion, all of these things, of course I still go through some of that today, but I realized that the pain and the tragic that I went through, of course my breakup, I realized going through pain is not a bad thing. Like, going through pain, I realized when I go through pain, if I'm going through a really hard trial in my life, it brings me closer to God. If I'm going through just a really painful time in my life or a very difficult trial, if I'm just crying out to God, just like, God, I don't know why you're putting me through this, but I know for a reason that you are putting me through it. And it helps so much because during these times of my life, I know that if I go to God in prayer, I know that he hears my cry, and I know that there may be some times where I feel like God is not going to answer my prayers. For several months, I have realized God has answered so many prayers, and I couldn't be more thankful. Anyways, that was my testimony video. I'm actually really happy I got to film this. Like I said, I wanted to film this when I started doing YouTube, but I actually thought it was best for me to just wait and give myself some time to really just grow spiritually in my walk and my faith. And, you know, I feel like filming this video even now, it was a calling from God. I just feel like, you know, I just really wanted to share this with you guys. And if God saved me like he did, and I know he can do the same for you, if any of you guys are watching this really encouraged you, or if this really just spoke to you, I'm really happy to hear that. If you've gone through something similar like what I went through in my life growing up, just know you are not alone. We're all in this together, and of course there are people in your life that love and care about you, just like how God has really provided people in my life that do love and care about me. God can do the same for you. Just know whatever that you are going through in life, know that God seriously cares about you, and he wants a relationship with you, and he deeply wants every single one of us to have a desire for him. But anyways, if this video seriously encouraged any of you guys, and if this actually spoke to you in your life, well, praise God, because I'm happy to hear that. I just thought this was a calling from God to actually want me to film this video. Through today, I just thought of, you know, just I don't have anything to do today, I'm not really going out. I just thought, you know, why not just film my testimony video? And I was actually going through my phone, and I have a list of like video ideas of what, you know, I want to film, and of course I saw my testimony video. I was like, I really feel like God is actually calling me to film this video, and of course I'm actually really happy that I did, and it makes me just so happy just getting to just share my testimony. I wouldn't even be here if I wasn't even like sharing my testimony of just how God has seriously worked in my life. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to think of an emoji you guys should comment. Comment down below the cross emoji. Anyway, stay tuned for my next video, and I will see you guys in my next one. God bless you guys. Bye.